It's natural for vision to decline with age or with time, but then it becomes alarming to see the increased number of children battling with eye defects. Although rising statistics say it's attributed to maybe early onset symptoms or problems, it has become imperative for us to talk about some of these threats militating against our children's sights and causing them to have eye defects. Welcome to Inside Health on Signature TV. I'm your host, Chika Bassey. And today we are discussing screens, sugar, silent threats, and the new enemies of children's eyesight. Don't forget, we are live 24/7 online on YouTube at Signature TV Official, and we're also live on SLTV channel 265. We're going to go on a short break. When we come back, Inside Health continues. Stay with us.
We are local.
We are right now with the wife of the man that was
Why the main market is in chaos. People
We are national.
Those in support of this motion as amended, say aye.
we have taken it through by default.
We are international.
Israeli airstrikes.
Donald Trump left us the worst unemployment.
Signature TV, news in your pocket.
And if you're just joining us, this is Inside Health on Signature TV, and today we are discussing a very vital subject matter: screens, sugar, silent threats, and the new enemies of children's eyesight. And I would like to introduce our experts on the show, Dr.Chika Bassey. Dr. Chika is an ophthalmologist, a consultant ophthalmologist with UNTH Enugu. Thank you so much, Dr. Chika, for joining us on the show this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You would even agree with me that we've had tons of discussion about, children and eyesight even before we went on air, and there are some things you were, telling me that blew my mind. Now, so many people are aware of screens. Even growing up, I knew screens were bad for eyesight, especially going very close to screens. So, and people are becoming aware of sugars. But then there are other silent threats against children, because you notice that before now, children weren't as exposed or as predisposed, rather, to eye issues as they are currently. So can you take us through, given your experience, of course, as an ophthalmologist, can you take us through some of the experiences and some of the things that, have caused children to have eye issues, in the course of discharging your duties?
Okay, so just like you, hello to the audience. So just like you stated, the screen. Now, previously, kids played outside. They spent a lot of outdoor time, more than they do now on the screen,
True.
The aim thing now is for children to have an iPad. If it's not an iPad, the mother places them in front of the television to keep them busy. Okay, now as much as children gain a lot of information on these devices, it has the drawbacks.
Yes.
Okay, so constantly looking at the screen, okay, could be defective to the child's eye, in the sense that the child could have fatigue. It could cause eye strain. The child could have headaches. They could have dry eyes, because some of them, don't blink as often as they should while
watching television.
Yes, while going through the screen. So we advocate kids to spend less time on the screen. Actually, one of the there's the rule, a 20-20-20 rule we have, where we say you spend 20 minutes, for every 20 minutes you spend on the screen, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. It's like an exercise, sort of, so that you don't spend so much time on the screen.
Can you break it down?
Okay, it's a 20-20-20 rule, stating that for every 20 minutes you're working on either the computer, the iPad, or the television, look at something 20 feet away for 20 seconds. So like now I'm looking at this screen, okay? I look at the screen for 20 minutes. So I would tend to look something 20 feet away
Maybe
for 20 seconds.
From the
From
house
the screen,
to
maybe from
looking
the house
outside
to
the window.
outside the window, exactly, you know, for 20 seconds, and then you get back to the screen. So all these are just to exercise the eyes, right, so that we reduce the ills that can come from excessive screen time. One of them is the refractive error. Okay, studies have shown that
before you get to that, just so the viewer will get a very good perspective. So 20 minutes, you look out through your window, maybe
20 minutes on the screen.
now
for
20
every
minutes
20 minutes.
for every 20 minutes,
Yes.
you look out for 20 seconds or for 20 minutes
At something 20 feet away,
20
at a
feet.
distance,
Okay,
for 20 seconds.
okay, so it's minutes,
Minutes, feet,
feet,
seconds.
seconds.
Yes.
Now when you talk about 20 seconds, it means counting from 1 to 20.
Yes, something like that.
Okay,
And
okay.
then you can get back to the screen.
Absolutely,
So that
brilliant.
you're giving your eyes that
Time to relax.
Exactly. And
Okay.
the muscles to rest.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so I was trying to say that studies have shown that excessive screen time increases the risk of a child having a type of refractive error we call myopia, normally known as short-sightedness.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that basically light gets into the eye, and then it's focused on the retina, which is at the back of the eye. Okay, and then that's the impulses that get to the brain, and then the person sees, right? So studies have shown that excessive screen time gives them short-sightedness, such that the images don't focus on the retina, rather it focuses in front of the retina. So the child gets blurred images and they're unable to see appropriately without being aided by glasses, spectacles. Okay, so studies have shown that. So that's why we advocate children. Yes, it's good to be on the iPad, right? Get information and whatnot. But there should be, as you said, screen time. Time allocated to the screen and time allocated to the child having outdoor activities,
All
so
right.
that we reduce that risk
All
of
right.
them having that refractive
Now, when we
error.
talk about screens, we talk about monitors, computers, iPads, basically any sort of monitor.
Yeah.
But you find out, I don't know if it's a class thing or people trying to show they belong. You find out our children as young as 10, they have their own personal, either PC or phone. Now, at what age would you advocate a child gets a device?
Well, you know, right now, like in some schools, they use devices to teach the children. So if you start putting an age restriction per se to it, it may not work for a lot of the primary school students who now do assignments on the iPad, you understand? But definitely you won't want a child below 5 on the iPad. What is the child doing? You understand? But even if the child is going to play games, it should be a restricted time. Like there's a rule that says children below 2 years should have only 2 hours spent on the screen per day.
Per day?
Yes. You understand? So that shows you how limited it ought to be for children of that age range. But those that are in the primary school, people may argue that, well, they're using it to do their assignments. Then if that is the case, play out that 20-20-20 rule. So that at the same, while the child is getting the work done, the child is also exercising the eyes as well.
Okay, interesting. That's all about screens for now. Let's talk about sugars. You know, like I told you, I was aware of screens even while growing up. But sugars, people are become aware of how dangerous sugars can be. But then there's a school of thought that will say, well, children have actively growing and dividing cells. They can afford to burn these sugars. You know, children can, take sugars. But what is your thoughts? What is the relationship between sugars and what kind of sugars should we look out for? How does it affect children's eyesight?
Okay, thank you for that question.
You're
So
welcome.
sugars, natural sugars is good. When I say natural sugars, I'm talking of the sugars you get from pineapples, oranges, watermelon, honey. Now those type of sugars are good, okay? Because they give the body the carbohydrate the body needs, okay, for activity. But when you come to the added sugars, the additives that they put in all these foods we eat now, and the bad sugars, basically, those are the bad types of sugars.
Do you know
Now
what I
those-
need you to do for me?
Yeah.
I need you to be, well, not really as specific, but I need you to talk about, you're talking about sugars in teas, beverages,
Yes,
sugars
now-
in soda,
Yes.
sugars in,
Coke, exactly.
these children's juice.
Yes, the
Talk about
Capri-Sun.
it. Talk
Yes.
about it.
So those sugars are the ones that are not necessarily good for the child, which is why it should be limited. You know, you don't go in, you want to take a cup of tea and you're pouring in 5 spoons of sugar into that tea.
Did you know that the beverage itself contains sugar?
Exactly. So that's excess for the child. And when these sugars get into the body, they're stored up as fat. Okay? Before you know it, you see your child being obese. The child is adding up some weight. And the sugar in itself may not directly cause, but then it's a risk factor to the children having diabetes. You know, you hear of diabetes, juvenile diabetes and all that. Yes. So it's a risk of the child having diabetes. Okay? And when they have diabetes, you know, the eye is the window to the soul, right? So the eye, basically anything happening, not everything, but many of the things that occur in the system can affect the eye. So one of them is diabetes. A child having diabetes could also have some eye symptoms as a result of having diabetes. Yes. One of those things that can occur to the eye, apart from dry eye in the front of the eye, at the back of the eye, the child could have diabetic retinopathy. Okay?
Wow.
Yes, which is a condition, you know, that is caused by high levels of sugar in the bloodstream that affects the retina and could cause a lot of problems in the back of the eye. Wow. And apart from diabetes also, the fact that the child is obese also predisposes the child to a lot of other things, hypertension and so many other conditions. So sugars, that's added sugars in itself is never good. It should be taken, because you can't really say, okay, I won't give this child Capri-Sun. There's a limit to everything.
Can we not call the names?
I'm sorry.
Can we not call the
I'm
brand
so sorry.
names? It's all right, go ahead, please.
So you can't say you won't give this child beverages that have sugars in them, okay? But then limit it. So it's not in excess, you understand? Everything
so you don't go packing it into that child's food pack every day. Going to school.
Everything should be taken with limits, so that you don't risk the child having
this fruit. I don't even know whether to call it a fruit or a pulp. I don't know what to call it. Sugar cane. How good is the sugar? I actually cringe at sugar cane.
Okay.
But I don't know whether it's out of the fact that I just don't personally like sugar cane. But do you think the sugar in sugar cane is good?
Well, the sugar in sugar cane is natural sugar, because it's a plant. You understand? It's natural sugar. So the harm there, unless, you know, it's an individual that already has diabetes taking that, that would be dangerous to the individual. Okay. But if it's someone that doesn't have a health condition, right, these are natural sugars. What the ill that comes with sugar cane is, how was it cleaned? Because most times when you buy it, they've peeled out the back and they've, you know, probably soaked it in something prior to your purchasing. So what you'll be worried about now is, okay, how was it cleaned? And before consumption.
That's the kind of water they used in preparing it.
Exactly. So that will be your worry at that point in time. But sugar canes and the other fruits I've mentioned, these are natural forms of sugar. So that's why most times we advocate, okay, if you're making zobo now, use the natural sugars, use pineapples, rather than using those additive sugars they sell that you put in to make it sweet. Exactly. Those ones store up as fat and, you know, can increase your risk of having various conditions. So rather use the natural sugars. Instead of giving the child an added sugar, give the child pineapple. Cut oranges. I mean, these things are so readily available and fresh. So give the children more of the natural sugars, so that you reduce their risk of having all these health conditions that can affect the eye over time.
Yes, there was something you mentioned to me as part of the silent threats, because I'm actually itching to hear you talk about the silent threats. Those things that we don't even know affects the children's eyesight. But before we go into that, how can a mother be able to identify? Because before you can go to the hospital, let's just be realistic, there must be a symptom or a sign or something to tell you something is not right. So a mother of a toddler, how can she know that something is not right with this child's eyes and we need to go see a doctor? So are there some signs that the mother can pick up on and say, this child needs to go and see an eye doctor?
Oh yes. So for children that have problems with the eye, there are various symptoms they could have, right? The child can come and be like, they're having headache. Mommy, I'm having headache. Every time I'm reading, this part of my head is always paining.
There's even a particular part, the frontal.
Yes.
Really?
So, so when the child is complaining about that often, think of it, the child may have an eye problem. Or the child says, sometimes tears comes out of my eyes.
For no reason.
For no reason. It could be plenty other things, okay? But the point is there may be a problem with the eye, okay? The child comes in, okay, mommy, sometimes I don't see the board in class. Sometimes I look, it's double. Okay, sometimes I have to, she may not say this, but you just notice that when she's looking at something, her head is like this sometimes.
Yeah.
There could be something wrong and the child will need to be seen.
Or squinting.
Exactly, or squinting, So these are the various little signs the child may have. Or even the children that copy notes. You come in, you see your child, she copies notes, it's not on the line, it's going off the line. And you're flogging this child every day. You don't know what's going on. She's just not seeing properly.
Example. He writes and then he veers off the page.
Exactly.
I thought it was something with the brain or something.
Well, it could be a lot of things, but it could also be that the child just has a refractive error and is unable to, has astigmatism and unable to see those lines straight, and so it goes off the line. Oh my goodness,
you're so right. You're so right. The diagnosis came in as astigmatism.
Exactly. So
wow.
That's what, these are just few symptoms children may have.
What about physical, maybe morphology, or the way the eye looks, the white of the eye, the black of the eye? Is there any way they could look that looks different, and the mother will say, no, this one is no longer aesthetic? So okay, tell us about it.
Okay, yes. So there's this reflex called the cat eye reflex. Okay,
cat eye.
Yes, we call it leukocoria. It means a white reflex. Now when you take a picture, so that our audience can understand, when you take a picture of people in a group, right? When you take a look at the picture, especially when there's flashes.
Okay, let me take you to what's showing on the screen. What exactly are we looking at? Because this is scary.
Okay, now this is megalocornea, right? The front of the eye is enlarged, larger than the normal way it ought to be. Now this could be a sign to a lot of things, right? But one of the common things it could be that the child has what we call congenital glaucoma. You've heard of glaucoma before,
yes,
right?
but what we know of glaucoma is it's for the age.
Elderly, right? Yes. No, it can also occur in the newborn, normally called congenital glaucoma. It can also occur in children above 3, juvenile glaucoma. Yes, so when you see a child, but normally when the child presents with this type of eye, it normally occurs below 3 years because the eye is still, that part of the eye is still expanding.
Yes.
So when you see that type of thing, you'll be thinking maybe this child probably has glaucoma, and you really need to see an ophthalmologist at that point in time.
Now you're talking about
now,
camera.
This one
yes,
is the cat eye reflex, right? When you take pictures, especially when you use a flash, there's a red reflex you get back.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So if you do that and you notice that one of the eyes, or it could even be both eyes, is giving you a white reflex rather than that normal red reflex that you get, yes, the child could actually have a condition. The child could have a cataract. It could be a congenital cataract. It could be an infantile cataract. It could be anything. You understand? It could also be some other conditions we call retinoblastoma. It could be prematurity, retinopathy of prematurity, a condition that comes with children that are, born before 9 months of age. Yes, so these
premature kids.
Yes,
if you look at this, although if they could call back the picture, you could see that there are 2 different colors of the black of the eye, the gray part and then the dark part. I've actually seen people with that kind of, arrangement. What is that exactly?
You mean this picture, right?
This picture.
Okay, so this is also a picture of a child who has glaucoma. And you see that in the outer color you're seeing is actually the iris.
Okay.
The brown one at the rim is the iris,
okay,
which is being seen through the cornea, which is transparent.
Okay.
But then you see the line. There's a line like a wave that goes across from one end to the other end.
Yes.
Okay. So that is what we call is a striae. We call it half striae, normally seen in congenital glaucoma, and could be a sign that probably this child has glaucoma as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so we really need to look out for these signs and don't just take it lightly.
Yes.
Now, when we were talking before we went on air, there were some things you opened my eyes to. You told me about the regular broomsticks we have in the home.
Yes.
Please tell us about it.
Okay, so exposing our parents to know that, rather people in general, to know that these broomsticks can be harmful to the child, right? It's important to advocate children to not play with broomsticks, right? Because you tend to see them using the brooms, and before you know, they've pulled out one and they are playing with it. They are using it to do swords. Exactly. You understand? And before you know it, especially when the child is not wearing glasses and playing, and then it goes into the eye and causes an injury. Before you know it, the child probably has what we call microbial keratitis, like an infection of the front of the eye. And if not managed appropriately, it could also result in the child losing that eye. So we advocate children should not play with sharp objects. Okay, broomsticks is one of them. Some children use stones. They make the stones into catapults and they play with it. That as well can harm the eye. It could mistakenly hit the eye and result in something else. And even children that play ball, they should be mindful of their eyes, because they could also have blunt traumas from the ball hitting the eye, and that could cause a lot of conditions in the eye. It could affect both from the front of the eye to the back of the eye, even causing what we call retinal detachment at the back of the eye. So yeah, children should play with things that are safe.
That are safe.
Avoid sharp objects, avoid stones, avoid broomsticks, especially broomsticks, because these are things that could happen right in the house. You
Yeah.
understand? Yeah.
Yes, you spoke to the 2020 rule. Are there other silent threats in form of maybe activities that parents allow or do not allow that are inadvertently affecting the eye negatively? Are there activities that children should take part in and parents are saying, no, 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 you know, and it's affecting the eyes of the children? Those things that are silent. Sugars we know, screens we know, but there are other, you know, silent issues, or maybe a kind of food. We've talked about sugars, but are there other activities or diets, just anything that could be affecting the eyesight of kids that parents don't even know about?
Okay, so as we're going in this direction, I'll bring this into know. You know, in Africa, right, we have this ideology of using some fruits, plant extracts and whatnot. You know, child's eye turns red, and they tell you, oh, those days what they do, just carry this plant, squeeze the water, put it into the eye, and the child will fine. Now, some people do that and get scot-free, but it's actually very, very, very dangerous, especially to the eyes. You could just get that child to have a corneal opacity, that is the front of the eye turns white, and the child has blindness just from having used a plant extract into the eye. So I'll use this opportunity to advocate against using traditional eye medications. These things that are not manufactured to be used in the eye, referred to as traditional eye medications, are very, very, very dangerous for the eyes. Yes. So squeezing out, even some people use urine. You have a mother that gives birth to a child, the child's eyes turns red, and they say, yes, just press your breast milk into the child's eye and everything will be fine. That is very, 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 very bad and shouldn't be done.
But they say breast milk contains antibacterial activities.
Breast milk contains antibacterial activities that should go into the mouth of the child and into the stomach to nourish the child, but not the eyes. Not the eyes. Nothing aside what has been manufactured in a container being sold by a certified pharmacist should be put in the eye. Anything aside that is not meant for the eye.
All right. Are there eye issues that could be caused by maybe hypersensitivity, allergy, and how are they treated? Because I know that growing up, if there's redness in the eye, there's a particular brand that they will tell you, go and get this eye drop. Even an antibiotic, there's an antibiotic in form of an eye drop. Just tell us about it. How should they be used, especially when it comes to things like conjunctivitis and other allergies that affect the eye?
Okay, so my advice there would be, if a child has allergic conjunctivitis, which is caused by some allergen, okay, and you're
What's
given
an allergen?
Okay, that's,
you do know that you're not lecturing medical
I'm so
students.
sorry. I'm so sorry. Like, for example, children that when they go outside and they're exposed to dust, you see they start scratching their eyes. So dust in that instance is that allergen. It's something that's triggering that allergic reaction.
Yeah, reaction.
Exactly. So in that instance, if a child is given eye drops, maybe by the doctor, it's important to use those eye drops as they were prescribed and for the period of time which they were prescribed for. Most of those eye drops, once it's 1 month after you've opened them, they are no more viable and they shouldn't be used on the eyes. 1 month after, well, that's 4 weeks after opening. So that's one thing to take note of. Another thing is, we have this habit of people have eye issues. The eye turns red and you go to the pharmacist and they give you eye medications and you use it. A couple of times what they give you are these eye drops we call steroids. Now steroids have what they are used for in the eye, okay? They can be prescribed by your ophthalmologist for a particular condition but should not be used anyhow because long-term use of these steroids can cause glaucoma in the long term. Yes. So if you're not, that is, steroids in itself, how will I put it? It's not a general drug that is used to treat everything.
Yes.
But that is the case in most instances when you get these drugs over the counter without it being prescribed by a specialist. So we need to also take note of that and be careful on what we put into the eyes.
All right, there was something that was placed on the screen just now, different types of eye issues. You did mention myopia,
Yes.
and then astigmatism. Can you just give us just a brief lecture of some of these? Yes, normal vision. What exactly are we looking at? It looks like, what's it called?
Like a torchlight.
Like a
going
torchlight,
into the
or
eyes.
what's this thing that they use? They use
Your
magnifying glass.
Okay, magnifying glass.
But we
yes.
can also see some nerves. So tell us what exactly we're looking
Okay, so
at.
these are just different schematic representations of the eye, and how light passing through the eye is focused on the back of the eye, which we call retina, which transmits the impulses to the brain and makes you to see clearly. So the first there is the normal vision, the normal thing that you expect. And then the second picture is myopia, that's a short-sightedness, where instead of the image focusing on the retina, it focuses in front of the retina.
We can see that
Yes.
yellow
light stops just before the back of the eye.
Yes.
And so the child will be having blurred vision for things that are far away.
Interesting.
So the same thing, the picture below, that's hypermetropia, where the light
or the
focuses...
long-sightedness.
Yes, where the light focuses behind the retina, also gives a blurred image. And then astigmatism, you have it's focusing in different meridians, and so the child.
So
also
what does a
has,
child see in terms when the child has astigmatism? What exactly does a child see?
Well, it depends. In some instances, the child sees, like if the child is looking at a bulb of light, the light may appear to have a tail to the child. Okay, and in some instances, when they look at some letters, the letters may be bent and not straight as they ought to be. That's why sometimes you see them writing off the line, because the line is not as straight as it should. It's bent off, exactly. So things like that. And another thing is, I would want to advocate to our parents, when you notice a child is unable to see, that is, the teachers have complained the child cannot see the board, it's important to get that child to see an ophthalmologist on time, because at that early stage, the error can be corrected with glasses, right? So that the child has
that was going to be my next question, but go ahead.
Okay, so that the child has normal vision restored and the eye develops as it should. Okay, now if this child is not given glasses at that time when the child requires the glasses, there's what we call lazy eyes. The eye becomes accustomed to seeing in that way, which is not appropriate.
So the brain gets used to
becomes used to that, exactly. Such that even as years go by, when you finally do decide to take the child to an ophthalmologist and the child is given glasses, the child may not be able to be corrected to that is normal vision 6/6.
What is normal vision?
Normal vision, that is when you look at the chart. Normally when you come to the ophthalmologist, there's a chart where you read some letters or some numbers, and we can get the patient's visual acuity from that chart, exactly. So normally you should be able to read to the second to the last or last, depending on the calibration of the chart. So when they have lazy eyes, even when they're giving the glasses, they may not be able to read to those last numbers and letters in the chart. And that's, is detrimental to the child's vision. So I advocate that if the teacher has given any parent any information that this child, I noticed the child can't see the blackboard properly, or doesn't copy, he has to look into his friend's note to copy, please get that child to see an ophthalmologist so that they can get the eyes checked and get the correction, adequate correction on time to preserve their vision.
Interesting. Now, you did talk about getting the child presenting early, getting spectacles for the child, and they will always say it's correctional. But are there cases where the child tends to continue using it even into adulthood and into old age? If that is the case, what made it no longer become correctional for that particular child? Is it that there was a misdiagnosis or something? Just take us through that little dynamic.
Okay, so normally, right, there's a natural development of the eyes, okay? And as the child is growing, the eye is growing as well, up until at least 20, 21, thereabout, when the eye stops growing. So at that young age, when the child has the good correction, the glasses that helps the child see appropriately, the eye develops as it should, right? Such that at the age, there's a particular age where the eye has reached, we call it emmetropia, but basically what it means is that the eye now sees that normal vision I described. The child can see that last without a hair. So once the child has the glasses, and the glasses give the child normal vision, the eye develops appropriately up until when the globe has grown to that extent where it reaches the normal vision, and then the child may not need glasses again. Okay, But in some instances, when the child has passed that particular age and still has that error and no correction has been given to that error, when you now give glasses, the child may, because the eye did not grow as it ought to. Basically, in simple terms, what I'm trying to say is normal vision guides the development of the eye in a child. So if the child has normal vision when they're small, the eye will develop as it ought to and get to that age where it sees appropriately how it should. But if the child at the young age is not seeing properly and no vision, no glasses or correction is given to that child, the eye will not develop as it ought to. And so even when you discover it later on, when the child has passed that age where normally, naturally, the eye would have gotten to exactly, they may now end up having to need that glasses for a longer period of time. So it's still another advantage to why if this child has symptoms, okay, not seeing the board appropriately, it's another advantage to why the parents should take the child early to see the ophthalmologist so that they get the correction. And so maybe the child may not need the glasses as time goes on. But if you miss that period and you maybe you waited for 5 years before you now took the child for a review and the child now gets the glasses, they may have to wear that glasses for some time.
Okay,
yes, and it may not necessarily be that correction that could have occurred at the younger age. I don't know whether what I said is quite clear.
Yes, I do understand. And now, aside some congenital issues, or scratch that, aside eye issues that could develop from maybe other comorbidities like diabetes, are there other health ailments or health conditions that can actually affect the eyes directly or indirectly?
Okay, yes, there are. An example, I'll talk about children that are born earlier than
premature.
Yes, preterm children that are born before 9 months of age. So there's a condition called retinopathy of prematurity. Basically, what it means is that a condition occurs on the back of the eye, which is the retina. Normally, the blood vessels grow as there's a way the blood vessels develop. And so when a child is born before 9 months of age, the blood vessels halt and don't develop as they ought to. There are some other things that may predispose the child to having the condition, like children that are premature. Normally, they are put in an incubator. They are placed on supplemental oxygen. Some of them may be exposed to having sepsis, which is infections and whatnot. So some of these other risk factors can predispose the premature child to having what we call retinopathy of prematurity. So this is like a salient risk, which is why if anybody knows or anybody has a child that was born prior to 9 months, it's important for the child to have the eye checked. Because these are not things you see. The child will have a pediatric retinal surgeon, ophthalmologist, would have to look at the back of the eye and follow up that child up until the vessels at the back of the eye develop the normal way that they ought to. Now, if they don't develop the normal way they ought to, there are various risks that can occur and complications that can occur from that. And, okay, this is one of the salient things I would want to bring out so that people that know anybody or anybody that has a premature child should know that they should have regular visits to the ophthalmologist to get the back of the eye checked. Yes.
Wow, interesting. We're still talking with Dr.Chika Bassey. She's a consultant ophthalmologist, giving us insight as to the reasons why children are losing their vision. Well, we're going to go on a short break. My Doctor and I segment comes up right after this break. Do stay with us.
Every second, every minute, every day, news is breaking. Events occur and there are new developments. At Signature TV, we follow these stories objectively, bringing all sides without bias, explaining the complex issues, breaking down the numbers, and investigating the issues behind the news. Anywhere and everywhere, near or far, wherever the news is, we will be there. Signature TV. News in your pocket.
Many thanks for still staying with us. Don't forget, we are talking about screens, sugar, silent threats, new enemies threatening our children's eyesight. And Dr. Chika Bassey has been in the studio doing a wonderful job. Don't forget, you can reach out to us because we want to hear from you on our social media platforms. We are 24/7 live on YouTube at Signature TV Official. We are also live on SLTV channel 265. Don't forget, you can also go to your Play Store and download Signature TV app. All right, so before we went on the break, I was telling you that when we get back, we'll talk about my doctor and I. Basically, what we do in this segment is that we glean submissions online based off of eye issues, and we'll have you talk about it. Okay. So okay, John from Ebony says, when my child complains about blurry vision or headaches after screen time, does it really mean that the child has bad eyesight? Basically, I think you have spoken to this.
Yes, I have.
But does it actually mean that once a child complains about headaches after screen time is a serious pointer, or generally any kind of headaches? So if you can just elucidate a little bit on this, because he says the child complains about blurry vision and headaches after screen time.
Okay.
So what do you have to say about this?
So it could be a pointer that the child may have a refractive error. It could be a pointer.
Can you break down what refractive error means?
Now, refractive error, you remember the picture we had where we had the normal vision, the short-sightedness, long-sight. So long-sightedness, short-sightedness, astigmatism, all that is in the scope of a refractive error.
Okay.
Yes. So it's possible the child may have one of the conditions, most likely maybe astigmatism or the long-sightedness. If after looking on the iPad for a little while, the child starts saying, I'm having headache and I'm having blurring of vision. That's one. It could also be that the child has what we call dry eye.
Dry eye?
Yes. But dry eyes in itself will not give the child headaches. Rather, the child may say when she looks at the screen for a while, she has some blurring of vision. But then when she blinks or closes the eye for a little while and opens it goes away. Exactly. So that could also be. But with the headaches added, it could be a refractive error. So it's best he takes the child to see an ophthalmologist.
Interesting. Yes. Okay, so the second, Felicia Nwankor from Lagos says, when did protecting our kids' eyes get so complicated? Because while we were growing up, we didn't go through all this. I feel happy.
Yes.
So why have it gotten worse?
Well, it's not like it's gotten worse, really. I think then we weren't really
life wasn't so deep.
No, you wouldn't say life wasn't so deep per se, but I think a lot of things happened then, and I would say maybe God was protecting us. Yes, not that he's not protecting us now, but a lot of things we know better now, and we are more enlightened now than we were then. Because in those days, if a ball were to hit a child's eye, it turns red. Just leave him. It will clear. And it will clear. And he may, for some children, they may not even be able to see a particular aspect, in their visual field after that incident. But then, people just say maybe that's how it's supposed to be. But now we are more empowered now. You understand? We're more empowered with the knowledge and the information than in those days. It's not like as if these things didn't happen then. But people didn't know that, okay, if this child's eye gets hit and he's not seeing a particular side, it's a problem. It could just be one of those things. But now we know that if such a thing happens, there's someone to see. You see the ophthalmologist and get it solved. There's a solution. I don't know whether you understand what I'm trying to say exactly.
Well, you know how they say the body cells tend to regenerate. How come cells of the eyes, they don't regenerate? Instead, they depreciate.
Explain more what you mean so that I can.
Okay, so there are new cells. For example, hematologists will tell you that new blood cells are being produced, new skin cells are being produced, even brain cells. New ones are always being produced. How come the eyes don't produce new cells?
Okay, now.
They tend to just degenerate with time.
No. When it comes to the eyes, you have the skin, the eyelid, that's part of the eye. So what occurs on the skin still occurs on the eyelid. You have the front of the eye, the cornea. When people have abrasions, superficial injuries that occur on the surface of the eye, right? If it affects a particular aspect of the eye we call the epithelium, it will still grow back. and cover up a flare. Well, the child may have some symptoms at that time the incident occurs, but over time it covers up and those symptoms go away.
Go away.
Now, the part of the eye that we say it doesn't really regenerate as such is the optic nerve. When you come to talking of talks of glaucoma,
I'm wondering if you could pull up the visual
the picture,
impression.
exactly,
Yes,
that would help.
yes.
Because
So-
the optic nerve in itself, when it's damaged, now that doesn't recover. Yes, when it is damaged,
So
it
in
doesn't.
myopia, hypermetropia, astigmatism, glaucoma, cataract, do all of them affect the optic nerve?
Now, the hypermetropia, that's the long-sightedness,
The
short-sighted,
refractive-
the refractive
Yes.
errors, they don't affect the optic nerve. What happens is that the light getting through the eyes does not focus on the back of the eye, what we call the retina.
So it doesn't affect the optic
The
nerve?
optic nerve is fine.
Can you show us the optic nerve there?
The optic nerve is, okay, at the back of the eye, that thing that
Looks
is like a
tree
stump,
and
like a stump.
branches.
Okay, the tree is coming out from somewhere.
Yes.
That stump at the back,
Yes.
that's representing the optic nerve.
Okay.
So in most instances, now anything could be happening in anybody's eyes, right? But in most instances, the optic nerve in itself is okay. The problem is that the light getting through the eye is not focusing
On the
on the retina to enable the child see properly. Rather, it's focusing either in front or at the back or at different meridians. So in that case, the optic nerve is still functioning properly. But in the case of glaucoma, okay, the most common, you know, modifiable factor, which is the intraocular pressure, just like the blood pressure, it goes up for one reason or the other, and then that high pressure in the eye compresses the optic nerve. There are various mechanisms, but this is just one of them. It compresses the optic nerve and now causes damage to the nerve itself.
And
So
it
that's a
doesn't
different
it doesn't
mechanism.
grow back.
Yeah, so when it's damaged, at different points in time, you have some cells that are dead, some that are about to die, and some that are just in the beginning process. So those ones that are dead, no, they don't come back. Okay, but those ones that are not yet dead, at the point in time where intervention, you know, something is done, you're giving eye drops to control the pressure, or you undergo laser procedures or surgery, it reduces the pressure, and then those ones can be recovered. But those cells that are dead in the optic nerve, that's why glaucoma is one of the common causes of irreversible blindness, even though a lot of studies now are undergoing, you know, to find a way to get people that are blind from glaucoma to see. But the optic nerve, as at now, when they die, they do not recover. It's an irreversible blindness. And that's why we advocate for early detection so that we can start management and preserve the vision the patient has, you know, for a lifetime, yes.
All right, moving on. Belema Khalil from Okrika says, more kids need glasses. Is it because of genetics or habits? I think in one way or the other you've answered this, but would you want to speak to this? Just
More children need glasses because...
yes. Is it because of genetics or habits? Is it nature or nurture?
Okay, so one of the, just like when we talked about screen time, okay, one of the risk factors for having short-sightedness that's, you know, we found out now is that excess screen time. So in that case, it would be more of a behavioral thing. Rather than spending some time outside as well as indoors, the child is always indoors, reading books, on the screen, iPad, computers, or what have you. In that case, that was what probably predisposed the child to having that condition. But then we also have genetic, yes, because you come to a family, you can see a family where the mother wore glasses, the grandmother wore glasses, sisters wearing glasses, you know, it just runs in the family. So yes, we have that as well.
Interesting.
Yes.
All right, moving on, because come to think of it, in the 70s, in the 60s, 70s, you hardly had like families having televisions, you know, so it wasn't really
Yes, it wasn't
an
really a risk
issue
at that
yes.
time.
All right, moving on. Halima says from Abuja, are we replacing outdoor play with screen time and sugar? I don't quite understand what Halima means here, but I think we'll have to go on over to Onome from Sapele that says, could their vision be affecting their learning and we are missing it?
Definitely.
Because
You could have children, right, are not doing well in school,
not copying notes,
failing in the exams, and the only problem is that child is not seeing properly. You know,
and
most
probably
times
the child doesn't know how to express what he or she is
either the
going
child
through.
doesn't know how to express it, or the child has expressed it, but then because children are they express themselves in dicey ways. Sometimes the child may tell you, "Mommy, I'm not seeing," and then you be like, "Oh, he just saw his cousin the other day wearing glasses. He wants to wear glasses. He's not serious." You understand? But then the child may actually have a problem. The child may not be doing well in school. He's not copying his notes. When it comes to the exams, they write it on the whiteboard or they are projecting on the whiteboard. So he's not seeing it, and so he's failing in class. It could just be that he's not seeing. Not necessarily that he's not a smart child.
Yeah.
Take him to an ophthalmologist. Let him get glasses and he's seen properly. You see that child change overnight in his academics. So yes, definitely it does affect the child's academic. Definitely.
All right, I think this is the last of the information from online. Ugoni Adams says, is it normal for a 6-year-old to wear glasses now? Of course, this answers the question. Yeah, it is normal. About it, yes. So Kelechi Mogu from Abba says, do schools need to talk more about eye health during PTA meetings? This is an interesting one.
Yes.
What do you think?
I think this is actually something that is ongoing now, because we also have advocacies where we are trying to encourage school health programs on eye health, where we educate the teachers on the children's eye health, tell them, okay, if you have any child who you notice is not seeing the board properly or not doing well, it could just be that the child's not seeing properly, and all you need to do is inform the parents. So the parents take the child to see an ophthalmologist. So this is something that is ongoing now. It's not a future thing. It's what we're doing now. And also, teachers could also take notes. That people listening right now who are teachers could also take notes, even the headmistresses and what have you, to also note that children who have complaints, I'm writing copy notes, I'm having headaches, see tears coming out of the child's eyes, or all these symptoms we have talked about, it's important that during the PTA meeting, they let the parents know. The last PTA meeting I had in my child's school, I actually educated them concerning the eye health of their child and what they shouldn't do, you know, things like that. It's things that are ongoing right now.
So yes. I think it's a very good, very effective strategy if you ask me, for dissemination of information. I think finally we have a Destiny Misha card from Bonnie. At what age can I start examining my child's eye? This is an interesting question. I think we talked about it, but
as early as possible. No age is too small.
Yes.
No age is too old. As
you talked about tearing up.
Exactly.
Being photosensitive. What are the others that someone could notice in a child?
See, the thing is, aside all these symptoms I have given that the child may have that would make you want to take the child to go to see the ophthalmologist, like glaucoma in itself, aside children that are less than 3 years old, when a child is above 3, having what we call juvenile glaucoma, they may not necessarily have symptoms.
Really?
Yes, the pressures could be high and no symptoms at all, until when the problem now is advanced. You understand? So, by right, we ought to have an eye check annually, biannually, whether you have symptoms or not, by right, okay? But because we are symptom driven in Africa, nobody, I mean, if your eye is seeing properly, why are you seeing the doctor?
And the cost of eye care.
Exactly. So that's why, no, but I advocate, not because I'm an ophthalmologist, but I advocate at least annually. You should take your child to see the ophthalmologist. Just look at the eye and be sure everything is all right. Exactly, because there are so many salient things that could go on in the eye, especially glaucoma, that could cause problems over time. Even cataract, the child could have a cataract. And you may, okay, if you don't take a picture, you may not even notice it. Do you understand? Like we talked about the cat eye reflex.
Yes, yes.
If a picture is not taken and maybe it's not a completely covered
flash.
Exactly. Or if we have cataract, it could be matured, which means the lens is totally white. It could be immature, which means just a section of the lens is opaque. Exactly. In that instance, you may not really get that obvious white reflex. You understand? But if the child went to see the doctor, exactly. But if you're going on annual visits and the child's eye is looked at, you could detect it, and it will give the child a refractive error of sorts, which would require correction to avoid the lazy eye we talked about. So you see, getting the eyes checked is not necessarily something you wait for symptoms to do. However, if your child is having headaches, tears coming out of the eye, probably not doing so well in class, not seeing the blackboard, and all that, tells you I'm seeing double, I have to squeeze my eyes like this to see, that is a reason for you to go and see.
When you say lazy eye, that's in our local parlance, it's called 430. Is that
no.
what you mean?
No.
What do you mean by lazy
Now,
eye?
that's what we call 4:30 or 4 o'clock eyes, as I know it, is we call it strabismus. In that instance, the eyes are not straight.
One
eye
this way,
is
the other one
tilted.
is this way.
Yeah, that is another reason for you to see your doctor, because that could also give the child is not seen adequately when that eye is like that.
Really?
Yes. And only just as simple as the glasses you're wearing could make that eye straight. Yes. So that's one of the things to take note of. When I say lazy eye, what I mean is that a child should see the last or the second to the last number, as I said, depending on the chart that is used. 6. Exactly. So now, when the child hasn't had that vision for over a period of time, and the eyes have passed a certain age, the brain gets used to not seeing perfectly as it ought to, and that's why it's lazy. The brain just says, okay, I stick with what you're saying. And so when you now come trying to correct the person's vision, you can't get that vision back to that good the 6 vision that is the good vision. So that is what I mean when I say lazy eye. Yes, it's called amblyopia, the medical term. It's different from the 4 o'clock eye that we know. Yes, it's different.
All right, let's talk about some of the myths that are making the rounds. Myth number 1, screen time directly causes permanent eye damage in children.
So we've talked about this.
Yes. So is it a direct yes or no?
No.
Okay.
It doesn't cause permanent damage. However, it's the excessive use and, not monitored use of screen time that can be a risk to a refractive error.
All right.
And some other conditions, computer vision syndrome and other things. Okay?
I think even in the course of our discussion, we've answered number 2. Sugar has no impact on eye health.
Definitely, sugar has a large impact, as we have previously discussed.
All right. And then myth number 3, kids don't need to see an eye doctor unless they complain about vision problems.
Which is why I brought up what I brought up. It's important to have at least annual or biannual reviews, even if you don't have any symptoms, because there are a lot of salient things that could damage the eyes if not noticed on time.
True. Myth number 4, only genetics determine whether a child will develop myopia, nearsightedness.
We've talked about that as well. It's not genetics has a part to play, but there are other things involved.
Now, myth 5 says blue light from screens is the biggest threat to children's eyes. What is this blue light? I've heard that before.
Yes, it's the blue light from the screen can, cause fatigue.
Is it like gamma emissions? What's blue light?
No, it's not gamma. It's one of the spectrums of light that, emits from the screen when you're looking at the screen. So it could give you fatigue, especially when you're constantly on the screen. It could give you eye fatigue, stress to the eye, computer vision syndromes and what have you. That's why we have what we call the blue cut lenses, which we now advocate. When you wear them, you feel so much better. If you work on the screen often, like if you're a banker or if you're a child that is always on iPad, which we have already advocated against. However, if you're a child who works on, does assignments on the iPad and whatnot, if you put that blue cut into the lenses, it sieves out
lenses.
Yes, into the lens. It kind of sieves out that blue light such that the child or individual has more comfort while looking at the screen.
Is that exactly there's a particular function in the phone that tells you for eye
there's some of them that have ease. And notice when you put that function,
it's so cool.
Exactly. So that's what that blue cut lens also does as well.
Interesting.
It just cuts out those spectrums of light that give a lot of fatigue to the eye, and you have a lot of comfort.
All right, finally, myth number 6, eye problems in children are always obvious. Now we know the answer to that. They're not always,
not all the time.
Always obvious. Thank you so much, Dr. Chika. We have come to the end of our talk, but I'm sure you must have 1 or 2 things, maybe a parting short to parents or maybe to kids, to whomever. Is there anything that we're supposed to talk about that you are itching to talk about? Just say it out now. We have 2 minutes to go.
I think we've talked about most things I had in mind to mention. But what is of importance now is you, the viewers, listening to what I have said, right? You have been empowered with this knowledge, what we've discussed now. You have been empowered, so you know. So it is your duty now. If you see a neighbor or your friend is complaining, oh, my daughter, she's not doing well in school, she's having complaints of headaches, I think she's just playing around. It's now your duty to say, oh, I listened to a TV station the other day, and the doctor had this to say. Yes, please go get your eye checked. So that is your duty now as an audience, to advocate what you've heard. You see someone, your neighbor just gave birth to a child prior to 9 months. Oh, please get that child to have the eye checked. Something could be going on. You see some beautiful eyes, the big black eye. Please go get your eyes checked. So you are now empowered with that knowledge.
You're now an advocate.
Exactly.
Wow, thank you so much, Dr. Chika Bassey. It's
You're welcome.
been a very interesting 1 hour talking with you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you've heard her. If you know better, now you know better. Therefore, go out and do better, because your health is your wealth. We want to hear from you. So go on over to our social media platforms. We are 247 live on YouTube, Facebook at Signature TV. So go like, comment, share, tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm still your host, Chigichi Agorom. Remember, like I said earlier, your health is your wealth. Bye for now.